Hello, my friends. Welcome again to Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. We had some big milestones this week, and it's all because you guys are listening and sharing with your friends. And this is one you're going to want to share with your friends because this is one of those every now and then. I do a lot of podcasts because they're fun, and I do them because they're interesting. But every now and then I get to do one because it matters. And this is one that matters. Now, I'm going to be straight up with you. We're going to try to do this podcast. We're having a little bit of a transmission issue, and my guest can't really hear me that well. So I told them, listen, you guys have the most important things to say. So I'm going to back up and let you guys say it. I'm just going to try to facilitate because once you find out what they're doing, you'll want to hear less from me and more from them anyway. So this is Loreal and Natasha. It's the Arukah Project.org. My friends, welcome. Thank you for joining me. How are you both?
Thank you, Gary, for having us. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. We're looking forward to this.
Well, could you start off by tell me about the Arukah Project. Tell me what you do. First of all, tell me if I'm saying it correctly. And then tell me what you do.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So, Gary, you are saying it perfectly. Arukah. And Arukah is a Hebrew word meaning restoring to wholeness in spirit, soul, and body. So what Arukah does is we serve survivors of sex trafficking. Now, while we're based in Santa Cruz County, we have helped victims all over the state of California and actually all over the United States. So we go where we're needed. We work in several different arenas of human trafficking. We do prevention work. And I'll have Natasha speak a little bit more about that, but we work in trainings, individuals, law enforcement, firefighters, general public about human trafficking, what it looks like in our area, how to spot it for families and kiddos, and how to stay safe online on their phones. We also operate in rescue and recovery. So I have a 24/7 chat that if a victim is able to get a hold of a phone or a computer and is able to reach out for help, they are able to access our 24/7 chat. And then we work very close with law enforcement to help get them out of the trafficking situation they're currently in. And on top of that, we also work in aftercare. So once they are rescued and out, we continue their healing journey alongside them by providing shelter, medical resources, emergency transportation, trauma-informed therapy, job training, mentoring, pretty much anything they could need to stay out of the life that they have just been rescued from. I am the executive director of Arukah Project. I'm also the co-founder, and I oversee all of the anti-trafficking work that we do. And I'm going to go ahead and let Natasha go ahead and introduce herself and talk about all the amazing things she does here at Arukah.
Thank you, Loreal. So my name is Natasha, and I am the Deputy Director of Arukah Project, and I'm also the National Training Director. So what we do is we go into schools. We have a program for schools, our safe and healthy students. We have our Defender series, which is for families or teachers or those that are guardians of any minors that talk about how to have a healthy family, how to communicate in a healthy way, how to prevent predatory behavior, how to recognize those red flags online and in person. And then also we talk about human trafficking and sexual exploitation. We also do have age-appropriate trainings for our youth, our younger children, but we also have trainings for our first responders, our law enforcement, fire departments, anything, our medical health providers. We basically have a training for any type of organization, business, or demographic out there because trafficking does not discriminate.
Let me get right to the uncomfortable. We hear the word sex trafficking, right? And it's one of those terms that you hear, but there's not a lot of specificity. You hear mental illness, great blanket term, 97 different brackets. When you hear sex trafficking, most of us hear it, we feel uncomfortable. We feel like there's something wrong just with the combination of those two words. But we really don't know what it is. Most of us don't understand. We don't even know how to recognize it because we don't know what it is. Can you guys get into a little more detail of what it is? And also we'll get into how can we help as far as spotting it. What can we know when things don't look right? Because humans are built with great intuition. We are. It's what kept us alive. When everybody else had claws and speed and everything, we had the ability to go, uh-oh, whoa now, hold on. Can you address that? Loreal, Natasha, it doesn't matter to me. What is, if you can tell me a little more, what is considered sex trafficking?
So there is definitely what I think people, to put it in layman terms, right? I think people think of sex trafficking like maybe in a different country, or that goes on over there, or that doesn't happen here. They don't understand, due to lack of education and also due to sex is a taboo topic in general. And people don't want to talk about prostitution, escorts, stripping in the club, pornography, the adult industry. People don't want to talk about that because as a society, that's they are disregarded, right? Like that's those kinds of people who make those kinds of choices, who do those kinds of things. That doesn't affect me and my family. Well, what sex trafficking is in our country and what we are seeing, that's why there's the term domestic sex trafficking, right? So it's within our country, the United States, is we are seeing familial sex trafficking, which is where a family member, a guardian is trafficking their own children to uncles, aunts, friends, other members of the family. And then for whether it be drugs, monetary, for anything, housing, shelter, we have that, right? So then we have sex trafficking where we have students, let's say. So we're just going to say, for example, there was a middle schooler. She was, we'll just call her Sarah. She had met a high school boy. They were in a relationship. They felt like, wow, she's like, I'm in love. This is great. And then as time goes on, there are no red flags, except now the high school boyfriend has taken her to a party. And he says, I want you to have sex with my friend Mike. She says, but I don't want to have sex with your friend. And he says, if you loved me, you will. And so then she is now put in that position to be trafficked because now this boyfriend is taking her around to different homes, different parties, get togethers, gatherings. And she's being sold for sex because he's being paid, whether it be for drugs, for money. But those are the things we're seeing. We're seeing that's happening in our schools. We have predators who are sending in high school age girls going to parties, get togethers, being in school and convincing their friends and other girls that are in school, hey, I have this friend, he's got this house. We can go there after school. There's no parents. We can hang out. No one telling us what to do. And then they're being drugged and being kept there. So there's all these different ways that people don't recognize what sex trafficking can be and how it's so close to home, right? We have had college students be trafficking victims. We've had very well-known people with their children be trafficking victims. It is across every demographic. Traffickers don't say, oh, we don't traffic those kinds of victims, right? So that's why we always talk about the process, right? The formula that traffickers use, right? So they're going to identify a vulnerability in your child, right? And then once they're going to provide that vulnerability, and then they're going to exploit it. So let's say this child is raised in a very, very strict home, right? They can't go out, they can't do anything. It's come home after school, you stay, you don't get to go out with your friends, go to the movies, nothing, right? The child doesn't feel like they're being treated for the age in which they should be treated, right? You have a 14-year-old who's not allowed to even go to the movies on the weekends, right? Even if mom and dad drops them off and picks them up. So you have a trafficker who recognizes this vulnerability in this child and says, your parents aren't treating you like the adult you should be treated. If you hung out with me, this wouldn't happen. And I treat you like the adult you are. So now I'm the trafficker. I've identified that vulnerability, right? You come from a pretty strict home. Now I'm going to provide what you're not getting. So let's say a child is in financial crisis in their home. Maybe they have trouble putting food on the table, the parents do, or they're in charge of helping give their paycheck to their parents to help provide for the family, right? So whatever that vulnerability is, that trafficker identifies that and then provides that vulnerability and then exploits that vulnerability. Once they've exploited that vulnerability, like, so you want to go back home and starve? Because now that child has realized what they've gotten into and they don't like it anymore. And now there's no way out for them through their thought process. And now that trafficker is exploiting that, right? So you have somebody who comes from a strict family. Now it's like you want to go back to basically being a prisoner in your own home when you have freedom here. And all I'm asking you to do is have sex with A, B, and C, and D, and you have all this freedom, right? Or I'm giving you housing because your family has been homeless and now you have a place to stay. And so thinking logically, that trafficker in that child's brain or in that trafficking victim's brain, it's an actually logical explanation. You're right. I don't want to be homeless anymore. I didn't like it when my family and I were homeless. I didn't like that my parents never listened to me, didn't give me a voice to say, why can't I just go with my friends to the movies? Like, you're picking me up, you're dropping me off, you're right there. You can check, my phone to make sure I'm there. So that is a logical explanation that our brains can process, right? So that trafficker says that, and then that victim could be like, well, I guess you are right, right? So you see this brainwashing process happen and this cycle continue to happen to where you're no longer fighting that anymore, right? That now you're there and you've accepted where you're at. So again, trafficking is not just what I think the movies and the TV shows want to make it out to be, right? That does happen, and I am not minimizing that, but we are talking about sex trafficking in our country and in our area in the state of California right now, and specifically in this area that we're discussing. And that's what we're seeing. And we're also seeing, unfortunately, this has nothing, this is not a political statement, but when the economy is doing well, you see fluctuations in any criminal activity, right? When the economy is doing bad, you see fluctuations in criminal activity. Things are different, right? We're in a certain economy and that's where we're going. So then you have other things come into play. And with trafficking, what people don't understand is the return on investment is wonderful and it's high and it's money making. Because if I'm a criminal and I'm selling guns and I'm selling drugs, I have to sell you the drugs or the guns. And then I need to get the money you're giving me back for me selling them and go purchase more. Once I have these victims and I have these bodies, I'm able to sell it to you. You give me back to her. I'm able to sell her or him to you. You give me back, you give her or him back to me. So it's a constant. I've already made my initial investment and now I'm just continuing to make lots of money off these bodies.
And unfortunately, those bodies become disposable. That's the other side that nobody likes to talk about, right? Once you get above the age of you're worthwhile, then we'll sell you and we don't ever want to care about what happens again.
Right. So
And it gets dark.
Yeah, absolutely. They do age out of the life because there becomes a point where you're not a hot commodity, you're not desired for whatever age that is. And you're either going to age out and then most likely have addictions and all these other things that come with trying to deal with the trauma that you and the pain and everything that you've had to endure while being trafficked, right? And then that's why we like to we don't really use the word like prostitute or prostitution. It's called survival sex work. And the reason is it doesn't matter whether trafficked or not, you're out there trying to survive, whether it's feeding your addiction, whether it's feeding your family, whether you're being trafficked, it is survival sex work. Because we know with a healthy state of mind, we might make different choices.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that you brought out that it's amongst everybody, because honestly, if I were to give you a thumbnail sketch about me, usually you think of migrants, you think of people who are coming from other countries, and but the fact that they're here,
Mm-hmm.
and as you said, it's on so many different levels because even people who are in wealthy families Children are amazingly gullible. They like to think they know everything. We've all been there. We treated our parents the same way. And what they don't realize is how naive and gullible they are, even the ones you think are smart. Because, and I know it's hard to hear, but wisdom is experience plus knowledge.
Yes.
If you have one without the other, you don't have wisdom. And you can read everything you want in a book and think you know something, but until you have the knowledge, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And those predators
Mm.
are banking on the fact that you don't have the knowledge. I mean, the wisdom, the experience to go
Yeah.
with the knowledge.
We
And that is truly scary.
Yeah, we always say at Arukah Project that the fact that your children think they know everything is one of the most dangerous mindsets that they can have, right? It makes that mindset alone makes every single child, no matter what social status you come from, demographic, whatever, it makes every child vulnerable to predatory behavior. Every single child, because every single person has a vulnerability. Every single person has a vulnerability.
The other side of the sex industry, and again, it can sound political. At this point, I don't care. There is a cost to be paid. If you think that most people set out and said, that's what I want to do. No, it's not. There's a cost to be paid. Listen, the psychological damage that occurs to people who consume pornography
Mm.
is huge.
Yes.
Imagine what it's like on the inside.
Hmm.
That is truly chilling and soul crushing if you think about it from that point.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons we're also so passionate about the prevention work that we do to get the knowledge out there, because we understand that traffickers rely on that vulnerability and that gullible thing. I know more than my parents. Look, I was 13, 14, 15 once too, and I had that same mindset. Back in the day, Facebook really was just coming out, and it really was your name, friend request, what school do you go to? It wasn't about predators looking for kids on Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Omegle. Social media has become such a breeding ground for predators to prey on children. And the pandemic, unfortunately, also increased that vulnerability as well, because the children were home all day on their phones, on their computers. Of course, parents still had to work. So the increase in predatory behavior in chat rooms shot up during the pandemic. As Natasha had mentioned, when you look at the economy, when you look at the state of the country, you can see trafficking situations or predatory behavior either rising, falling, being more hidden, changing tactics. And as we do trainings, Natasha's very good. We are very good here at Arukah as well, of staying up to date. What is the new thing that they're doing? What is the new tactic that we now have to warn parents that maybe we didn't have to warn 6 months ago? Because as we get smarter, they get smarter. And what a lot of people don't understand either is actually California is the number one state where it happens. And the Bay Area is a top 5 hotspot for human trafficking. And it may not look exactly as you see in the movies, or, we do get a lot of questions of, well, do they kidnap people? And the answer that we always give is yes. That is a tactic that is used. Is it used here a lot in the Bay Area? No, because there's other easier methods, which sounds horrible. But what we call them here at the Arukah Project is invisible traffickers, because they're online, they're talking to your children. Children aren't sure if it really is Henry, who's 13 years old from history class, or if it's another Henry who's 45 who lives in Washington. So when we go in and we train children in schools and we train children in classrooms, it really isn't about, oh, this is out there. This is what it can look like. And here's how to tell really if this is somebody from your class or if it isn't. Here's how to stay safe, because the digital age isn't going anywhere. We're in it. Children are going to figure out a way to get on a phone or on social media if they're not allowed. I did when I was younger, and it's only just advanced from, I'm a millennial, I'm 32. So it's only gotten worse. And so that's why we're so passionate about the prevention work, getting the knowledge out there, letting parents know, letting children know, to try and prevent it from happening. While simultaneously, every training we've ever done, there's always been at least one person who's come forward to talk to either Natasha or I to say, hey, you said something in your training. I didn't know what that was until now. Can I talk to you? And we have worked with victims coming out of the trainings that we've provided simply because we gave them language to something they may be in that they didn't understand while they were in it.
That's what I'm hoping that we cover today.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we all walk away from this with a better understanding of what we're talking about in sex trafficking. Because again, I'm in the media. I like to think that I'm very astute when it comes to topics. If you were to ask me, list to me what sex trafficking was, I think I would be embarrassed by my lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
You know, uh, and that's just me. Now, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back because we want to talk about the why, but I also want to hit some of those things we need to be watching out for. So, again, I told you, an episode that matters. We'll be right back on Here's What We Know.
It's time to think differently when it comes to your parties, meetings, and groups. The catering from Havana Cuba restaurant in downtown San Jose. Instead of the same old, how about the most delicious Cuban sandwich you've ever had? You're tired of fries? Plantains, my friends, they'll change your world. And here's something you didn't know. Havana Cuba was voted one of the top 10 tamales in the entire South Bay. They have vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options, and their website is 998cuba.com. They're located at 387 South 1st Street in downtown San Jose. It's Havana, Cuba.
I want to tell you why I am all in on Bison Junk. First and foremost, they are a full-service, eco-friendly junk removal company, but with this difference. They focus on recycling and donating usable goods. Their customer service sets them apart, and they pride themselves on their integrity. They'll show up when they say they will, and they'll do what they promise. If you have hard-to-remove items like hot tubs or large furniture, they figure it out so you don't have to. They want to be who you always come back to when it's time to declutter and organize your home or business. They're worth every penny at bisonjunk.com.
So I'm here with Loreal and Natasha. And again, I want to remind you guys, there's a transmission problem. They're having a very hard time hearing me, and bless their heart, they're doing a amazing job of pulling it off. Now, Loreal, you said that you're one of the co-founders. So our founder, I'm not sure what all the process is. Tell me why. Tell me what motivated you. Tell me what it was that made you go, somebody should do something, to, no, I should do something.
Thank you. That's a great question. So growing up, I knew I wanted to help people. I went to college wanting to be a lawyer for abused women and children. I wanted to fight for people who didn't have a voice. I fell asleep in all the pre-law classes. There was just no way I was going to survive that degree. So blessings to those who go to pre-law and then go to law school and end up at the other end. Praises to you. So when I was in college, I had taken other courses to satisfy other requirements. And I had to take a psychology course, and I absolutely fell in love with psychology and the idea of being able to create a safe space for somebody to walk through and process something difficult or traumatic in their life and being that safe space for somebody. So I ended up going to college. I went to University of California, Santa Cruz, graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. And then I ended up right after college going on a missions trip to Perth, Australia with Youth with a Mission, which is also called YWAM. And the basis of the school that I went to was justice through the eyes of the gospel. And the focus was sex trafficking and prostitution. Now, I had heard about sex trafficking and prostitution before, as I did not give it pay much attention to it. Up until that point, while I was there, and I realized, the trauma behind what is actually going on in the forefront, I realized this is the population I'd love to work with. These are the people, the women and children and men that I would love to work with, coming out of this, being forced into this, to give them that safe space to process what happened to me. And then when I came back here to Santa Cruz, I realized, one, that we are a top 5 hotspot, and 2, there was nothing being done here in the sense of to be able to give them that space of where they could go. So just through a bunch of research, I realized, there's people in law enforcement wanting to make a change. There's people in the medical field wanting to make a change, but there's no place for them to go. And there was just a moment where I just felt called to be like, you know what, I'm going to make that place then. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I met my co-founder back in 2016, and we partnered together. She had been a pastor and had been very involved in working with women's ministry, and was very passionate about my passion to really help women and children coming out of this severe trauma. And so we partnered together. We created Arukah, started working with survivors right away. And Arukah started in a sense of what I wanted to do, which is I wanted to be that person for them that they could go to talk about the crazy, and to not feel judged or to not feel less than. So that's how it began. And then the more we realized what we called the chasm of unmet needs, the bigger it grew and the more passionate we became about being able to tackle every arena. And we just said yes to every situation that came our way of, hey, we have this child. Can you work with this child? It was yes, but we need to make sure we're qualified and certified to do that, which is how we started our foster family agency to be able to work with trafficked children here in California. Then we got a question of, hey, can you come and train these people on what to look for? Yes, we need to do that. We have trainings, and we're going to create more, because where you may need to tell a firefighter what to look for, maybe you don't tell a family on what to look for on their phone. So it's different demographics, different training topics. We brought Natasha on, and her incredible list of just everything she's done for so long, working with law enforcement, training people, talking with people higher up of what this looks like, what to do when you see it. So bringing her wisdom, her experience on working very closely with law enforcement. So it kind of developed on its own. And the more we said yes, the more we realized how much was out there, to where now Arukah has become 5 years later an organization that we don't do just one thing. We work in prevention, rescue and recovery, and aftercare. So my yes back in 2015 was, I want to be that person. And it has evolved and become an organization filled with people with that same passion of, yes, we want to be those people.
Wow. Natasha, you're Batman.
She is Batman. It's true. She is
You
amazing.
are as focused. I mean, I would not want to be a supervillain in your sights.
No, you don't want to be a supervillain with Natasha on the lookout. No, you don't.
How did you get so focused? How did you get so focused, Natasha?
I think I have been doing this for 20 years. I have really entered this world. My bachelor's degree is in criminal justice, and I kind of fell into this by starting on a sexual assault response team, and kind of just, I think, back when human trafficking wasn't really human trafficking, there wasn't really a name for it, right? Because we were still saying but that's, Russian mail order brides, mafia, mob stuff. This is just not, this was having to still become something acknowledged in our country, right? Because those were just girls who were arrested for prostitution, and that was their pimp. And we all wanted to be in this moment together, right? And so there took a lot of explaining and understanding and research. And then also I've testified on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. To help pass anti-domestic sex trafficking, human trafficking bills and stuff like that, and lobbied senators. And that has kind of just been my thing. But also when Arukah Project came to me and asked, would you be willing to be a part of our team? We would like to be survivor-led. That is because I put my trafficker away, one of the most prolific sex traffickers in this area, away for 174 years.
Batman!
Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all of them combined, Wonder Woman, all of it.
You got a Batmobile. I don't care if it's a Hyundai. It's still a Batmobile. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
What are the things we should look out for? You were talking about you're trying to stay ahead of it. What are things that we should look out for? If it's not our children, it's one of our children's friend. I guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet that your child knows somebody, whether they're in it or not, who's in danger already.
Yes. And L'Oreal, I'll just quickly say this and then you can go in on this. What people don't understand is that their child most likely is talking to somebody online already. They're snapping who they think is a friend. And it's things like, my daughter's not allowed to have connections on social media unless she has met that person in person. Right. But then also with that being said, there are times where, people have hacked, let's say, a friend's account that you do know in person and you think you're talking to your friend and it's actually not your friend. That's why it's so important to understand how social media works and to understand what your child is doing. But most importantly, walking into your child's room and saying, who are you talking to on the phone is already going to set you up for a defense that you don't want to deal with because they're going to become defensive. It's going to be, you don't trust me, right? That's why it's so important to take classes like we have that start with family talk, healthy families, right? How are you supposed to have that conversation with your child and protect them if both you and your child feel uncomfortable talking about it? If your child says, I don't want to hear this, I already know I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. It's not just about talking to strangers. There's so much more to it because not only should you have a discussion with your child about what to look for in all these conversations, but it's not just A, B, and C, watch out for this, watch out for that. How is your child going to feel when they're in a situation? Let's have those conversations too. Have you started a healthy foundation in your family to communicate how to instill self-esteem, self-respect into your child to stand up and say, I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. And to know I can go tell my mom and dad or my guardian, right? It's not just about when you get online, make sure you're not talking to adults or tell me if you're talking to somebody. Does your child even feel like they can come and tell you that something has happened, that somebody reached out to them, that they are uncomfortable? Have you set that line up? Because we have parents say, my child talks to me about everything. I cannot tell you how many times at Arukah parents say that, and then there's situations that have happened. We can feel like our child can talk to us, but truly, can they? Can they? Do you have, there's a responsive parenting and reactive parenting. Are you responsive to them or are you reactive to them? Do they feel like when they make a mistake, are you responding or are you reacting? By reacting, you're yelling, right? That's not going to teach them not to make the mistake again. It's going to teach them not to tell you when they make the mistake again, right? We want to have a response, which is a safe response, which is, okay, we see that you did this right now. Let mom and dad, whatever we are as your guardians, let us figure this out. Thank you for coming and telling me. You're not in trouble. We're going to figure this out. Other than you knew better than you, blah, 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 and this, because now they're going to shut down. And the thing is as we talk to our children, right? It's not, again, just about the bad guys. It's about, have we taught them and also modeled, shown by example, what healthy boundaries look like? Because again, predators are going to cross boundaries. Even as adults, we have a hard time saying, I don't like that. Don't talk to me like that. Or I don't like when you do that. Or setting boundaries just as adults. Imagine children. They're scared to speak up in general, to have to find that boundary, right? With our children, when they say, I don't want to talk about it. Stop asking me about little Johnny, who I like. Parents want to push. It's natural. We have to say, you're right. You've asked me not to keep asking about him. I know you'll talk to me about the boy or the girl you have a crush on when you're ready. Like, we want to push that. We need to show them that we're respecting boundaries and be that example, as well as whoever's in your home, those adults, are you showing a healthy relationship, healthy examples, and also showing healthy boundaries? And that's why at Arukah, we see how important it is not to just say, here's what you look out for, these bad guys, this is what they're doing, right? That's all going to be great and well. But the reality is, because of social media, 99% of our children are all going to at one time be confronted with something that's not okay on social media that they see. And so because of that, we have to be ready for our children to say, I need to show my mom, my dad, my grandma, my guardian, whoever this is, I need to say this isn't right and I don't like this. I need to say that this person at school is making me uncomfortable. And that when I go home, my parents aren't going to ask me, what did you do? Because parents have a tendency to say, well, what were you doing for that response to happen? You know, you get in trouble for talking in class. A parent's natural response is, well, were you talking? What were you doing? Instead of saying, which is very important in your home, can you tell me what happened and why the school called me today? Right? You're giving them a voice. Our job as guardians, as parents, is to empower our children to be able to empower themselves, to be able to protect themselves when they become adults. That is our job.
Is there, and again, at the risk of offending someone, are there any of the sites that are more problematic that we should not to condemn them, but to go, hey, y'all, because I'll tell you right off the bat, Snapchat scares the
Yes.
heck out of me,
Yeah.
right?
So
Because it's set up with the lie
yeah.
that hey, it disappears after 24 hours. No, it doesn't.
Right.
You may not be able to access it, but it's there.
Right. And there are, without going too much into sounding like a training, there are ways to get Snapchat without downloading the app. So again, it's having parents understand, having trainings, because as parents, we're not in the cool to know what the latest thing is, what the latest app is. When I'm talking to my child, they're very forthcoming, like, Mom, there's this new app everyone's joining. And I'm always like, tell me about it, navigate it for me. I want to learn, I want to know, because whatever I'm learning, I know I get to teach and I get to share that with everybody, right? But not everybody has that type of relationship in their home. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can share those things with everyone else, because I will tell you, this is how you know Snapchat isn't the best. We did a training and there happened to be not an 18-year-old, but a teenager in there. And she immediately came to the defense of Snap. And we know it was because they didn't want their parent who was in the training to take Snapchat away, right? We know that's why. But the defensiveness of Snap, it was showing you right there, right then and there, that what we are saying is the truth. Otherwise, it's like when somebody's getting defensive, right? She was fighting for this. No matter what Loreal and I said, it was like, but this, and this, and this, and this. And we knew, with her parents sitting in the room, they were probably concerned that their parents are going to say, oh my gosh, we didn't know all this about Snap, right? So that right there told us we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's my thing, that it sets itself up to lure them into stepping over the line.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and every parent has heard this. All my friends communicate this way, and
Yep.
I'm out of the loop.
Yep.
If I'm not part of that, I'm out of the loop. And so I've got a high schooler, right? I've got a ninth grader, and I hear this all the time. And I've been enough in this media to understand. I've talked to experts like you guys who go, hey, just so you know.
Yeah.
And I've tried to share that with my child. And I tell this to my son, buddy, at this stage of your life, my job is to protect the 35-year-old you from the 14-year-old you.
Yes.
Now, when you get to be 21, it turns into your job to protect the 35-year-old you from the 21-year-old you.
Yes.
But because these things, you guys grew up in the beginning of no. I still had landlines, right?
So
My
did
phones were
I.
attached to the wall.
So did I. There was no
but-
cell phone.
But it allowed us to make mistakes that did not follow us for the rest
Forever.
of our lives.
Absolutely.
And that's the difference of growing up now. And you don't get the get out of jail free card because you're 14 anymore.
Right.
Right?
Yes, that is another thing we have to tell parents, is that the laws have caught up with that stuff. And it's very black and white. It's not gray yet to where they understand that kids make mistakes, that there are laws that equal child pornography if you are in possession of it and you're passing it along and you're transmitting it through social media, phones, anything like that, computers. And that's another thing we do go over. We talk about how there is legal ramifications when you are 14 thinking that you're accepting nudes of other underage. And another thing, as you were talking about speaking to your son, another thing is people think it's only our girls that we need to protect. Right now, our boys are being targeted very, very heavily. And due to the way society has made young men feel like they can't speak up, they can't say, oh, I was tricked or this happened to me, they're facing consequences like taking their life because of it. We've had college students, males, high school student males, over things of thinking that they're talking to a girl and sending pictures. And then they say, give me $200, $500. And then these boys will give money and then they can't keep giving money. And then they end up taking their life because they're so ashamed to say something. And this is what we're calling sextortion. And this is something that I know the FBI, NCMEC, which is our National Exploit Missing Children, I know they're focusing a lot on this because it's hitting our male youth, our male population. It's hitting them hard, and it's different. It doesn't minimize what our female youth are going through at all, or our female victims at all. It's just different because society has with girls, it's always their fault the way society looks at it, right? Like, what did you do? Those victims always feel like they did something. With our boys, there's this shame that hangs over them that they feel there is truly, truly no other way out. And so it's been that sextortion has been a thing. It is a thing. We do talk about it because we are, at Arukah, we're very open about it being boys and girls. And it does not, again, sexual exploitation does not discriminate.
You see, when I told you that I do a lot of these episodes, but every now and then I do one that matters because it really matters. It is arukahproject.org, ARUKAH project, arukahproject.org. I pray that you are not involved in human trafficking and sex trafficking, but I also know we should all be more aware. We should all get the training. Even if you're lucky and it never involves you, but it maybe involve your neighbor. It maybe involves your nephew or a cousin, or a coworker. And if you can just go, hey, here's this resource, that matters. Ladies, thank you for for doing what you do. Thank you for putting up for this lack of sound and being able to hear me so little. But I am just so impressed, and I'm so thankful that Loreal, if somebody should do this, no, I'm going to do this. And Natasha, no, I'm going to make this happen. We're not going to wait for somebody else to close the door on the bad guys. I'm going to make it. Thank you so much for just sharing a little of your life with me.
Thank you so much for having us, Gary. Such an absolute privilege. Thank you for being so passionate about the work that we do and having us on here to bring the awareness to this very, very real situation in a place that we call home.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, people think we're doing important work, but we absolutely cannot do it alone. We can't be everywhere at once. We can't, we cannot do this alone. I mean, it takes everybody. It does. It truly does.